Hey everyone, we're live. I'm Nate Morabito with NBC Charlotte. I've got this do not call registry up because we always hear it. If you're trying to stop those annoying telemarketing calls, the first thing you should do is to put your number on the do not call registry. And so I did that, and overall it works. But from now on, and again, we're always getting the calls from people who just consistently are just trying to get us to bite on something, right? So several weeks ago, my boss said, what if we find someone who actually used to be a telemarketer to see if they could give us their secrets and tell us what we can do to stop them from calling us. We're talking about like actual people, not the robocalls, because robocalls you're just supposed to ignore the call. But if someone is actually on the other line, you're supposed to pick it up. I know, like, how do you figure out and predict which is which? The bottom line is that there is a way out there that we've learned where you can actually try and use certain phrases to get them to stop calling you. And we're going to go through that tonight at 11 as we kind of put together our final story on this. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about kind of the nightmares that you've been going through with telemarketers. For me, it's always like right around dinner time. You know, I'm on the news at 6, and then I go home and like sitting down to eat, and I get the phone call. You know, my phone's blowing up. It's somebody, it's usually the college that I went to. I love my college, Syracuse University. But they're really good about calling, and they hire people to call, or they have interns to call, whoever, and they want me to donate. And that's great. You know, I'd love to be able to do that. I just don't want to talk to them right then and right there, right? Like, so I always will say, well, can you call me back later in the week? The thing is that when you say that, they actually will call you back, right? And that's kind of the one tip that I wanted to give you ahead of time before we kind of have the story tonight, is that if you tell someone, I can't talk right now, but maybe call me at another time, they're going to do it. Like, this is their job. They're going to try and call you, and they're going to try to get you on the line for a significant amount of time. So what about you? Like, for you, is it during dinner time? Is it late at night? When do you get the calls, and how do you handle them? You know, nowadays, I haven't had like a real like traditional phone, I don't know, since I lived in Minnesota like 16 years ago. So obviously it comes on the cell phone, but I have two cell phones. I have one for work, and I have a personal cell phone too. So it's like double the problems for me. Ruth is telling us, Ruth Burris, that fake IRS agents are the ones that are bugging her. And that's like always kind of the slippery slope on these telemarketing calls too, because you have to decide, is this a scam or is this like the real deal? And what we found in talking to this former telemarketer is, just like you and I, they have a job, and they're just trying to do their job. Pat Combs tells us it's at least 15 times a day calls coming in. Sydney's saying all day and a few during the night. And Tamisha's saying it drives me crazy. I'm with you there. But, you know, I was kind of mentioning these people have jobs, right? So when I was in college, my buddies would do cold calls, kind of the same idea, to make a little like side hustle, extra money. And what they ended up doing is basically everything we don't like about telemarketers. But these are real people that are trying to make a buck, usually hired by companies to try and either get you to buy something or get some information from you. So some people, like Penny, say they block the numbers. Yep. Chrissy says she blocks the number because warranty is always expiring, usually about 9 p.m. And you can block people, right? That's if you don't want them to call anymore. Yeah, great. But if you don't actually have a real conversation, if there's another person on the other end of the line, you actually have to talk to them. That's the key, because they need to know that you don't want to be called anymore, and there's a certain way to go about doing that. Walter's saying fake calls nonstop, threatening recordings to call them. I don't block them. Awful threatening folks. Faye, all day, every day. KC, the car's extended warranty, call stopped. Now it's a vacation specialist. These people think we're really stupid. Barbara suggesting use a blocking service. I guess she uses AT&T, that's her provider. You can use that, and I know on my iPhone I can generally block people if I want to. The spoof calls from cell phone numbers that ends up being a scammer, that's like the whole other issue here too. Like, you never know for the most part, and I know they're trying to change that in North Carolina and nationwide, along with some of the wireless providers. Like, you never know if it's a legit call or not. Like, if my phone's ringing, generally I'm going to answer it because I think it's an important phone call. So that's like a spoof call. But if I knew that there was an actual person going to call me, the first thing I should do is answer the phone. That's what this former telemarketer told us. You've got to answer the phone. You have to communicate to them. Don't call me again. And Ruth Burris is saying, I usually tell them to put me on the do not call list right away. Not this do not call list, right, Ruth? There's an actual do not call list that every company has too. Keep that in mind when you get the phone call. Try using that. Sydney, had someone spoof my number. I had a guy call me and threaten me when I never called him to begin with. I get phone calls from my own number sometimes. It's weird, right? You can use a block service, Teresa says, but they keep calling you from another number. That's why we're not talking about the robocalls here. We're talking about actual telemarketing calls. That is why you have to have the conversation with them. And I think Ruth really nailed it there. You got to tell them, don't put me on your do not call list. Don't call me anymore, okay? And sometimes if you call them back, the number's dead, right? Jason Miller, they don't even let you finish asking them to take you off the list before they hang up. You really, like, I cannot overemphasize this. You've got to be able to tell them to do that. That is the most important thing you can do if you don't want them to call you back. Tori Ferris, I get calls from her own cell all the time. I'm with you there, right? Tamisha, answer and start singing. They hang up and don't call back. So if you get a bad voice, I guess they don't want to talk to you, right, Tamisha? Yeah, the company do not call list is what Ruth is telling us on Facebook right now. Every company has a do not call list, not just the government. Every company does. Every company has a do not call list. I'm going to say it again and again for you. Tell them, put me on your do not call list. Put my number on your do not call list. Okay, so Tamisha, yeah, we want to know what you're singing there because, I don't know, it sounds like it might not be too good. Barbara says, let it go to voicemail before blocking. If they need you, they will leave a message, right? But then, like, the voicemails, you got to deal with them. Like, you got to delete the voicemails. I'm the kind of guy, like, my inbox on my phone for emails always, I've seen every email. It's just, like, in my head or whatever. So I don't want voicemails there long either. I immediately listen or delete them. It just messes up my day. Basically, it interrupts me. So what have we learned so far? The company do not call lists. Also, answer the phone if there's someone there. If you're going to tell them to call you back at a later time, you better believe they're going to call you back. So be prepared to make sure that you're available at some point. And it's like, I don't know why it's so awkward or uncomfortable to just have a conversation with someone, but for whatever reason, sometimes it is. It just seems easier just to tell the person to call you back, when in reality, you can just say, I don't want you to call me anymore. Please put me on the do not call registry. If you just deal with it right then and there, you're not going to have this issue. So Tamisha singing, hello, it's me you're looking for. Her kids love that one too. Who's that? That's, hello? Leanne, I let my 2-year-old grandson answer. Hilarious. They quickly hang up. Grayson, how can I file a litigation against them? I keep getting the auto insurance calls starting as soon as 9 a.m. I think, Grayson, if you live in North Carolina or any state for that matter, your attorney general may be able to help you out with that. You may be able to file a complaint against the company. Litigation is actual, like a lawsuit, so you're going to have to hire an attorney. But you're going to want to reach out to your attorney general and file a complaint, see if they can kind of be the middleman to help resolve the situation with you without having to go to court. Dr. Pat Forney, I have added do not call registry, but seems calls have increased. That's why the do not call registry is not the only step you need to take, and that's why it's just critical to talk to these people. Susan, she's asked to be put on their do not call list. The next day starts again from the same number. And at that point, I mean, who has time to do this, right? But I would escalate the call. I would say, I want to talk to your supervisor. But it's just like, why do you even have to deal with this in the first place, right? Sandra's getting all the calls. Lionel Richie, thank you. Ruth, yes. I thought that's what you're going for. Grayson Hicks, thanks for the tip. Yep, appreciate that. Any ideas that you all have too we want to hear? Like, what's the worst telemarketing call that you've ever received? Our photographer in the Defenders unit records every one he gets. He has an app on his phone, and he records every one just because I guess it amuses him, or we may need it for a story at some point. So like, it's a treasure trove of just the most ridiculous things. Sometimes, you know, you'll hear other people talking on the call because they're all in like an office with the headsets on, and sometimes the other calls will bleed over, or they'll be having a conversation about something, and you can kind of hear it in that as well. Mindy blocks the calls. It looks like we lost signal here. It's all good though. It'll come back up in a second. It's just the do not call registry. But we really just want to know, how do you handle it? You know, we wanted to find someone that could really accurately tell us what's the best way that we could actually handle these calls. And I think what you're going to find, this woman that we interviewed, she was in the business for 2 years. You're going to hear from her tonight at 11 on NBC Charlotte. She just had so many tips that I never even thought about, because she went through this day in and day out, and she knows what works and what doesn't work. And you're going to hear her recommendations tonight at 11. Ruth saying they have to comply. If not, they can get in legal trouble. Just let them know that you know this. And that's why I think you got to escalate it. You got to get it up to a manager or a supervisor. Sydney tells us she had someone call her 15 times in a row after she asked to be removed, so she decided to call them 15 times. They asked me to stop harassing them. I laughed and hung up. They never called back. Well, there you go, but that probably wasted a bunch of your time, but that's one way to handle it, right? Bobby says to block them. Yeah, I mean, blocking, sure, can work from that number, I suppose, but, you know, your information is just shared over and over again. If you ever opt into any kind of marketing and you put your phone number in, you better believe that at some point someone's going to get your number. We just did a story a few weeks ago about a bunch of women that were getting these cards in the mail saying they were pregnant and congratulations and a bunch of like gift cards. But these women said that they never opted into anything. Turns out they did, at least that's what the company said. And a third-party marketing firm had the information and shared it, and then next thing you know, you're getting a bunch of junk, what you consider junk in the mail, and you got to waste your time and your stress over whatever they're trying to suggest to you. So it's the same thing with phone calls. You put your number in there, someone's going to get a hold of it. Bobby Joe saying they call day and night. Lee Ann, blocking calls do nothing. They just call from another number. Grayson, I have a call recorder on my phone. Can that serve as proof of them calling? I'm thinking about keeping a log. Well, sure. I think the big issue is if you're on the do not call registry and they keep calling you, that really is an issue. And if you have evidence of that, I would let the federal government know as well, because this is not supposed to be happening. Once you're on this list, they really should not be calling you. And if you're on the do not call registry, which I didn't realize one of my phones wasn't on there recently, so I added it. If you're on there and someone's calling you, you need to let the government know, because that is good evidence that they're not kind of living up to their end of the bargain. Ruth, next time she gets a phone call, she's going to vent to them, tell them all her troubles, and start crying. Ruth, you must have some time on your hands. I just don't have like time to even deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to hit ignore, but as we've told you, don't ignore. Answer the phone call. Jamie gets them every single day. Very annoying. Hey there. Hey, Jamie. Good to hear from you. Hope you're well. Bobby Joe says they say they don't answer them. I'm not sure where you're getting at, Bobby Joe, but if you want to kind of clarify that, I can try to address it with you. At the end of the day, we wanted to get 4 or 5 tips that you can actually use tomorrow or whenever you get these calls. And we should mention that these wireless companies have shown some good faith from the robocalls aspect. They're trying to update their technology along with some pressure from the federal government to allow the robocalls to be prevented and to you to kind of stop those robocalls from coming in. But we also get telemarketers, and I think with anything, like the woman we interviewed for our story, she worked for, I believe it was a theater or a ballet or something. So she was basically calling people who had at some point bought a ticket or been to an event, and maybe those people didn't realize that they'd get a call at some point, but she was just trying to see if maybe they might be interested in coming back to another show or something like that. So it's not always nefarious like we kind of make it out to be. This is like a business that's essentially trying to get people to come in through the door through like this direct marketing. Myra Martin, I'm sorry. Sometimes I tell them to hold on and just lay the phone down. Yep. Well, you could do that for sure. But then they're going to hear all the commotion in your house potentially. Ruth saying it might be fun to try to vent to them and start crying. I don't know. I just get so tired of. Here's Spencer. Hello, Spencer. You're at our live stream. Want to come in? We're talking about telemarketing horror stories. You sure? Oh, no, I don't talk to myself that much.
No, I thought you and James.
Bobby Joe, most of the time it's not people at all. They say if you answer the call, they collect the number, probably sell it to another company. So that's the issue nowadays. Like it's just you can't predict if it's going to be a person or not a person. Like if it's just a robocall, you really are supposed to ignore it. But if it's a person, you really are supposed to answer it. So you kind of can't win, can you? Becky Harris chiming in saying, "Wow, yes." I mean, just we all deal with it. I mean, it's such a first world problem too, when you think about it. But it is a nuisance, it is annoying, and people really are, on one end of the phone trying to do a job, and on the other end of the line, we're just trying to go through our night, trying to make dinner, trying to get home from work and relax, whatever. So there's got to be some kind of a happy medium. Bottom line, there are some things you can do to try and prevent this from happening to you. And I'm just going to tell you one more time. And you can watch our story tonight at 11 for the rest. But number one, answer the call. Number two, tell the person, please put me on your company's do not call registry. Put my number and my name there. Don't tell those people to call you back. Don't give them another time to call you back. Just tell them, I want to be on your do not call registry. Thank you. Goodbye. And that usually should do the trick. At least that's what our former telemarketer tells us. Myra's saying, I'm certain they only hear what I want them to hear. Huh? Where did we hide the money? Are you sure he's dead, kind of a thing. And Ruth saying, even the national do not call registry only lasts so long. You have to register your number every 4 years. Justin says, just let them leave a message. I think everyone, if you get a second right now, when we end this here, just go to the do not call registry, register your phone. It's going to basically tell you whether or not your phone's already registered. You can verify it right there, or you can register. And that's what I did just to figure out if my phones were actually already on the list. So go ahead and do that. And then tonight at 11, watch our story on NBC Charlotte. Appreciate you joining us. Have a happy Thanksgiving.